Zelensky tried to pull a fast one over the people of Ukraine, but the people of Ukraine have said no. He brought in some legislation which was supposed to bring in their anti-corruption wings under him. I think the name of the two groups, anti-corruption groups, are the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine (NABU) and the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office (SAPU). Now this backfired because he did this quickly, tried to do it under the radar, but the people in the country reacted immediately with thousands going to the streets. And even if, strangely enough, even America and the West were against him limiting these two wings. So he's now backtracked and said he's going to change the wording in the bill so that he has less power. So this shows that he wasn't able to get away with it. But what's ironic is that both of these wings were created in 2014 by the U.S. and also by EU as a precondition for Ukraine joining the EU because of corruption. We know that the EU only cares about corruption insofar as it affects their governments and it affects America as well. It's not that they really care if Ukraine is corrupt, but what it really means is they created both of those agencies to make sure that they could be the ones pilfering the money from Ukraine and whoever's there. So I'm saying they made an anti-corruption because they need that money for themselves. Those two wings are something that the U.S. and EU rely upon to keep Ukraine under wraps. But if those things are under the power of Zelensky, it takes away power from the EU and the West, which is why they're protesting it so much. That's my theory. What do you think? Yeah, what I'm saying is that those two agencies
Yes, just
were created by the West. So now that
absolutely.
Zelensky is attacking those two
Yes.
agencies, the reason the West is speaking out is because they need those agencies to control the country, to make it more to make Ukraine more facile and controllable. Now, aside from that, Zelensky is saying that in order to he's controlling them because of the Russians. But that's a separate issue because the West doesn't care about that excuse. What they care about is they don't want Zelensky to have too much control over the corruption. To have control over corruption agencies because if he has control, it gives him too much power. That's what the West is concerned about. That's why they're speaking out against it. What are your thoughts?
Yes, and they need to be careful because of the concerns of the West. And as I had said earlier on, not only the West, but the Eastern countries that are part of NATO that are threatened to boycott, or vote against Ukraine joining NATO if they don't reverse these actions and sort themselves out, which clearly, since I saw the news yesterday, Zelensky has started to backtrack
Yeah.
now.
Now separate from that, he may be trying to control this anti-corruption units because he himself is corrupt and he's already unpopular because the war is not going well. So now if he does this, he can shield himself from any anti-corruption charges against him later. And we know that once he loses this war with Russia, the West is going to blame it on him and say that he was corrupt and he misappropriated funds. So he's also trying to save his ass because he knows that if the anti-corruption is going to eventually come after him because him and his wife have been living lavishly and have offshore accounts and things like that. What do you think?
Yes, I've been hearing about these constant accusations of these lavish accounts and lavish monies that have been leveled against him. And I had always assumed or expected to see a kickback against it, but I haven't actually seen any denials of it or responses to it from Zelensky. It's just been a silence towards it. And yes, these
Yeah,
corruption charges I thought should be easy to beat because they were collecting weapons, not actual money. And I was the one defending it. Then I suddenly noticed these guys aren't even defending themselves. They're being accused of collecting all this money for personal gain, and they're not
and
defending it. So
they took it away, but ABC News 2 years ago, the State Department made them cancel the report. They reported that only 30% of the weapons actually get to the battlefield for Ukraine, and the other 70% go on the black market and are probably due to corruption. So it's very clear that this war is a money laundering scheme for Zelensky too. So what we're saying is that he took his country to war for money. I know he's a cocaine addict. I'm not joking. He actually is a cocaine addict. So maybe that war was a way of feeding his cocaine addiction. What are your thoughts? Yeah. No, I'm serious. He sold his country for
well,
money
I
the
mean,
same.
I don't know. I
No,
wasn't
let
there.
me give you an example. Let me give you an example. He sold his country the same way that America sold our lives during Vietnam War. The CIA already let Nixon and Co. know that and Kennedy that we couldn't win the war, but they kept on going because they needed the money from corporate. So my point being is that's no different. That's selling your country, selling your lives, human sacrifice war to make money. So all I'm saying is that Zelensky put his country in a war that made no sense for America so that they can make money, and they also gave him a fee also. Isn't the logic clear? Yeah.
Well, there was a lot for Zelensky to gain, not just the financial wealth. I mean, he was taking over a country, a region from Russia, and he was in it with America, and America had a lot to gain from it
Yeah, but
under the Democrats and the expansionists.
Kool-Aid, when Zelensky ran for president, he promised that he would end the war in the Donbass, and he also promised that he would keep American meddling out. So, but I think they got to him once he got in office. They bought him. That's why so he's under their agenda. So what I'm saying, basically, what I'm saying is that Zelensky is putting the welfare of his country in jeopardy to please America, but they had to give him something to do that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
He doesn't
Remember,
care about his
Zelensky
country
wasn't.
the same way that Americans don't. Go ahead.
Yeah, remember, Zelensky wasn't elected. Actually, that's what I understand. He wasn't. He's not a democratically elected president. Am I correct?
No, I think he was elected because what happened was there was the Maidan revolution or whatever. Then somebody came in, but then I think eventually he ran, but he ran under a banner in which he said he was not going to. He wouldn't be antagonistic towards Russia. So that helped him get elected. But there was an interim government after the Maidan revolution when they got rid of the Russian speaking president. But I think he was elected. We'll have to check on that.
Yeah, my train of thought is on this whole episode is what's going to be the fallback from this? Were they getting close to finding something out? Was that why they tried to push back? Or was it just to maintain the status quo? And were they trying to push something that they didn't want to get caught doing in the future?
No, I think he's trying to cover up because he knows that he's done a lot of dirt. And I think he's trying to grab, and I think he sees the writing on the wall that people are angry about the war. Because now there's protests, even though this is a corruption protest, I think people are partly frustrated because of the war. So I think he's trying to cover past actions and also, like you said, future actions, because I don't think he wants to give up power, even when the West, he may even make a deal with Russia, as far as we know. Maybe that's why he got rid of those two arms of the government. He may even do a deal with Russia to save his ass. You get my point? Highly unlikely, but I think right now Zelensky is trying to cover his ass because I think he's going to take the fall for this. And I think the West is tired of him and wants to get rid of him. So, and they're going to use those anti-corruption, they're going to use those two agencies to get rid of him. So if he controls it, then they can't get rid of him so easily. What are your thoughts? Yeah.
Well, the problem is that if he does want to get a deal to get out of it, Russia will not be the way. He will not be able to do a deal with Russia. The antagonism between himself and Russia is too much. However, if it were China, he might be able to do a deal. China, though, want to see Russia win this war. China have actually said if Russia starts losing, that they would actually step in. China would be a better option for him to try to do a deal if he tried to extricate himself from this war. Obviously, he can't do it with NATO. That is the only other person he can do
you have to remember,
with.
Putin's very strategic. Putin's very strategic. So what Putin will say is that Zelensky was manipulated by the Americans and he's willing to forgive him. Remember, Putin was willing to sign a treaty with Zelensky. He said, I'm ready to sign with him anytime. What I'm saying is that so long as Zelensky capitulates, Putin doesn't mind. He'll forgive him so long as he capitulates. Do you see what I'm saying? Because that's how Putin is. Putin doesn't take things personally. He says, okay, have you learned your lesson yet? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I think he's been personally irritated by Zelensky in particular. I think it's personal with Putin. I think Putin is irritated with Zelensky. I'm not, even if...
Yeah, only irritated. You know, but here's what will happen.
Putin seems to take it personally whenever he refers to it.
Yeah, but ultimately Putin is a chess player. So if he knows that Zelensky can make his life easier by quickening the end of the war and meeting Russia's objectives, he'll do that. Then maybe later on Zelensky would die in a plane crash like what's that guy? Remember the guy who was the guy that Prezhugin. Putin forgave Prezhugin, then Prezhugin died in a plane crash later. Do you remember that? Yeah.
Yes, tragic. Everybody said that after he betrayed him, everybody said that Putin's gonna have to kill him, and then he died a month
Yeah,
later in a
yeah.
tragic accident.
And Putin said, no, I
Yeah.
forgive him. So what I'm saying is on paper, Putin would be like, yeah, I forgive you, Zelensky. Let's make a deal. Then after the deal, they'll get rid of him. If I was Zelensky,
It
I
reminds
would
me of
go into
Blackadder
exile
when
now, right now.
they
I would
wanted to execute. It reminds me of Blackadder when they wanted to execute the Archbishop of Canterbury, and they accidentally
yeah.
brutally cut his head off while shaving.
Oh yeah. Oops, nothing to see. All right, so that's it for today. So we'll be back tomorrow evening, maybe for F1 or Saturday. So take us out. Last thoughts, Kunle.
Oh yes. Yes, so it's been an interesting week in politics. We've seen some pushbacks in Gaza. We've not discussed that, but we've also seen some pushbacks in Ukraine that are very interesting that we've discussed today in respect of the corruption issues that are getting out of hand in the Ukraine. And we shall see how the West and the rest of Europe responds to these new developments. And from myself, I'm Mustafa. We shall bid you adieu, and we shall see you again on the next one. Like and
Adieu. Enjoy your day.
subscribe.
No more shows today.